Releasing in Australian cinemas on the 26th of October is a new Australian film, a rather intriguing science fiction thriller, a film called Monolith. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the director of Monolith, Matt Vesely. Matt, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, I know that Lucy Campbell wrote the screenplay, and this is your first film as a director. I know you've written other things. Tell me about the inspiration and the challenges that you faced in making Monolith.
Yeah, as you say, it was my first time directing something that I hadn't written, but actually really enjoyed that process. So collaborating with Lucy was a very freeing feeling, actually, and I'd love to do more of it. There's that you can kind of disentangle yourself, I think, from the script and have a kind of objectivity on it and concentrate on the things you need to concentrate on, which was really good. But the film was developed as part of the South Australian Film Corporation and the Adelaide Film Festival's Film Lab New Voices program, which is a kind of development lab where you would apply as a team. So Lucy, the producer, Bettina Hamilton, and myself applied together with the sketches of a few different ideas for films, and then developed it over the course of the year together. And so, Lucy wrote the script, but Bettina and I were there the whole way, kind of, helping come up with the idea. Kind of, it was Bettina's idea to make a film about a podcaster. I wanted to do something about aliens, and then we're kind of bouncing that back and forth. And it's a really rewarding process to collaborate so closely on something like that. And then Lucy just wrote a better script than I ever would have written, and it was very evident as soon as I read the first draft. So that felt very, you feel relieved, I guess. You read the first draft and you're like, oh, this is good. Okay, I feel good about that. But it was just such a pleasurable way to work on a film together that we're hoping to do it again with three of us, kind of repeat that and hopefully repeat the magic, because there was a simpatico between us that was really useful, I think.
Oh, how interesting to hear that. Now, when I first saw the title, I thought, is this going to have any relationship with 2001, the huge monolith that Kubrick developed? And of course, it's not like that at all. It's quite a different film. And using one actress, one performer, Lily Sullivan, I found this so intriguing. What were you hoping to try and present to the audience insofar as what this monolith is all about?
Well, yeah, it's interesting you say 2001, because originally, and the reason we started with the title Monolith is, the first pitch was that she was investigating. I don't know if you remember, I think it was 2021, maybe. This is a news story, someone started erecting these literal monoliths from 2001 around the world. They started appearing in like the desert of Arizona and all these kind of random places, and people would find them like, oh my God, what is it? And it was, it was some sort of art installation. But originally the idea was like she'd investigate that, and then it would turn out that it would be real. Like she would delve into the story and be like, oh, what seemed to be this kind of prank ended up not being a prank. And Lucy kind of moved away from that pretty quickly, but we kept the title because there was something thematically resonant about it. That, when you see the film, it is really about the power that a storyteller has, the kind of power structures that lead to who gets to control narrative and who gets to be the one that speaks for others, and the sort of intergenerational wealth and privilege that can lead to that thing. And there's something monolithic about those power structures. And so it still felt like that title held on a kind of really resonant level. So we stuck with it, and I think it's still, there's something haunting about that word that plays through the film. I mean, the brick, the mystery is that our hero Lily is a podcaster, kind of disgraced journalist that is desperately trying to find a way back. She's been fired from her job in the kind of traditional media, and she's turned to this like clickbait podcast and gets sent an email seemingly randomly about a brick and a phone number. She makes this call and starts finding that all these people around the world have found this strange object, this black brick that's influencing them in various ways. And she kind of gets sucked into the rabbit hole of that. And I mean, working with one actor, you know, as you say, it's one actor on screen for the majority of the film. Um, for 99, for all of the film, really, you know, there's a couple of video calls and things. And the idea was that this was, again, part of the production methodology is this lab we were in, we knew what our budget would be, and it would be a small budget. So you're trying to come up with creative ways to tell a story that are going to mean that the film is not done on the cheap. You're not squeezing something into that budget. You are making something that's kind of defined by it. That's like almost more interesting, or you can do something that you wouldn't normally do, you know. And so we had this idea of, can we do an alien invasion story with one person? Like, could you do that? That was our challenge. And the important thing was to wed the production methodology, you know, what we're going to be able to afford and how we're going to be able to make the film, but make sure that that's reflected in the narrative and the theme and the character. And so it becomes about this storyteller who doesn't think the story is about her, but eventually, of course, the story will turn inward and has to confront whether she is present in the story or not. And we as an audience thematically are wondering whether we can trust this woman. She's listening to these stories she's collecting from around the world, wondering whether she can trust these people. So it becomes this kind of multi-layered game of who is telling you a story, what are their motivations for telling you that story, and is truth present in that story or not. And so this idea of doing it with one actor becomes a sort of an aesthetic choice or a production choice, but it becomes a thematic one as well. And that it's that kind of constant thinking that's driving the making of the film.
Oh, that's great to hear that description, and absolutely echoes the way that I saw the film. And Lily Sullivan is so good as the central, almost sole person in the film. Tell me about casting her.
Yeah, well, Bettina, our producer, is very experienced television line producer. So she knows all the agents, which is a handy thing when you're doing a little mini film and you kind of need to draw on any resource you can find. And Bettina was reaching out to a bunch of the big agents in Australia saying, you know, we've got this film, it's small, you know, it's going to be a little film, but who do you think would be interested? And it was Lil's agent who came back and said, you should check out Lily. She's just shot Evil Dead Rise. It's not coming out for a while, but it's, you know, she's going to blow, you know, she's going to be big and she's looking for a challenge. And I think she'd be great. And we looked at her reel, and of course she's actually very experienced. She's done plenty of films here. I'd seen her in Galore. I'd seen her in the Stan TV show, The Other Guy, and I think she's a real standout in that. And so we were really confident that she could do it. We would feel very lucky to have her. But what we wanted to make sure was that she'd be up for the challenge of doing a small film, and that she was genuinely interested and excited by the material, not just like, you know, doing a job. And so we didn't audition her. We just met with her on Zoom. We had a call and just sat down with her for an hour and just chatted it through and just got a sense of who she was. And man, she's so down to earth. She's such a hard worker. And she was clearly excited to do something very different for her and like a new challenge, and was really interested in the script. And that's all you want from someone that you're going to collaborate so closely with. And especially on a small film, you need everyone to own their role and step up. You can't kind of fly in and out of it. Everyone has to be like in the trenches with you. So that's all we were looking for, really, because we knew she was an incredibly talented actor. And once we had that meeting, it just felt like a great fit. And man, there was times on set where we couldn't believe our luck. You know, we're so lucky to get her. The movie's going to fall. The script can be fantastic. It's going to fall apart if that performance is not good. And, you know, I think it was a few days in, we're shooting. One of the calls films a lot of interviews with people around the world. And one of them is with a German art collector. This was about 3 days in. And we're just sitting behind the split watching this like kind of extreme close-up of Lily, which is just listening to the story. And her eyes are so engaging. And there was just this moment, I remember looking at Lucy, who was on set script supervising, and we just were like, wow, like we've got it. It's okay. We're going to be okay. She's so good. So yeah, we're very lucky.
Yes, no, she's excellent. And I recognize some voices too. I noticed in the credits, Damon Herriman and Eric Thompson and some other people. So yeah, it's interesting how you've put that into the way the story develops.
Yeah, look, I think in an ideal world, you would have all your actors on set so that Lily can act with them and read off them. as a small film, you know, really tight schedule, that's going to be very difficult for us. So what we did was have one actor on set. Her name's Ansuya Nathan. She plays Paula in the film. Do all of the voices so that Lily's got someone to perform with. She's not performing to a recording. She's not performing to, you know, an assistant director off set just reading from a script. You know, she's got an actor to work with, and that was super important for her process. And Suya's a wonderful storyteller in her own right, so she understands what, you know, needs to happen to make this work. She's a theater maker and a filmmaker, so it was a really great relationship that they developed together. And Lily could ask her to do things that maybe we wouldn't use in the performance, but she just needed on set. So, you know, tell Answer, hey, can you yell at me in this line? I know it's not going to be a yell, but I just need something to like really shock me in that moment. Can you just give me something? Which worked so well. And it allowed us, when we're in post, we can get these incredible actors because we don't need them for very long. We're not asking them to come out on a shoot. We're saying, can you come into a recording studio for 3 hours and do this scene with us? And again, you're drawing on people, you know. I did a show called Aftertaste with Eric, and, you know, had his email and could email him and say, hey, Eric, like, I loved working with you on Aftertaste. Can you come and do this film? And he was so gracious to do it. And he's brilliant. He's perfect in that role. Bettina had done a film with Damon Herriman years ago, and we get him in the film. So you're drawing on all of, you're just trying to be resourceful as an independent, low budget filmmaker. You're just drawing on everyone you know, really. And we've all worked in sort of the junior roles in television and film for a long time. So we've developed some relationships that we can, you know, when it's our turn to make our film, we can get back to. And we're, again, super lucky. Every time we drop one of those voices in, we'd go and record and put it into the edit. The scene would just like come to life. It was so exciting.
Oh, what a process, and how interesting to hear the way that you went about that. That sounds really interesting. Tell me about location, because it is such an interesting, I gather it's not a set. Was it shot in a particular house?
Yeah, so originally the film is set on a beach, like a coastal home. And our location manager, Scott McCartan, went out and he found some houses for us to look at, and we went and saw them. They had amazing views. The coast, the coast south of Adelaide in South Australia is beautiful, incredible. The Fleurieu Peninsula, like, it looks amazing. But the houses were really lovely homes. I'd love to live in them, but they weren't quite striking enough visually. You know, like, film is like it's just another step above. And we also needed this moment. There's a really important turning point in the film, and it needs to hit really hard, where it's quite early on. She steps out of the recording booth for the first time. You've been in with her at her microphone for half an hour, you know, talking to people, and she steps out and, like, you know, makes dinner for the first time. We see the house, and you kind of need this moment of like, oh, look where she is. Look at this beautiful home. She comes from wealth. There's privilege there. There's, you know, that it ends up becoming a big factor in the story, and we kind of need the audience to clock that really clearly visually. And so I said to Scott, well, let's forget the coast. If we don't, that we can rewrite around that. Find me this most striking house you can find. And he found like an architectural design video online that was showing the building of this home, and thought it was amazing, in South Australia. And he managed to track down using Google Earth and stuff. He managed to work out where it was, and just went and knocked on the door. Literally just went up to this house in the Adelaide Hills, incredible home. And the family there was so kind to let us in. They just let Scott in. He said, hey, we're making this film. And, you know, I think part of it's probably that they want to show off their incredible house. It's like, oh, you're going to come and shoot it with these beautiful cameras and make it look like the best possible place. You know, we'd love to have that as a memento of our home. I'm sure that was part of it. And yeah, now they've got this wonderful showcase of their house because it looks beautiful on screen. So yeah, we just found it, and you know, it adds, again, so much production value for a small film to have a great location. Our cinematographer was excited. It's a very long home, so there's depth that he can work with. There's glass, there's a lot of light, amazing textures. It has this exposed concrete and exposed brick and all this stuff that we can just play with. And then our designer, Jonah Booth Remmers, came in and he completely redressed the home. All the dressing, all the furniture is ours, to give it our own, you know, character and what we want to say. But, oh man, again, these are like the important choices you make that can elevate your film. Make sure you've got a brilliant actor. Make sure you've got a brilliant location. And because we've only got one of each, we can put all our resources into that, you know, and make sure that it's really going to work.
Well, congratulations on that, because it certainly works extremely well. So well done on that. Now, I
It
noticed
was
the film premiered, Monolith premiered at South by Southwest, and also at the Adelaide Film Festival. What reactions have you had so far?
Yeah, well, that was like so. Adelaide was last year in October. South by Southwest was our international premiere was in March. We've then gone and done a bunch of international festivals. I just got back from Sitges in Spain, which was really exciting, kind of which is like a big genre festival there, mostly horror. Um, they call it the Cannes of horror films. As I think they're sort of joking, but it's kind of true. It's like on this beautiful Mediterranean coast, and like it's very very cool. But you just everyone's watching these horror movies. It's really funny juxtaposition. Um, Look, it's been great. Like as filmmakers, like going to festivals is really fulfilling for us. It's where you get to meet industry. It's where you get to meet other filmmakers. You get to show it to fans of cinema. It's like it's really helpful for us as we make our first step into the industry. It's like a really beneficial process. And we got some wonderful reviews. We got people coming up to us afterwards and saying lovely things. And it sort of makes it worthwhile, you spend filmmaking can be, it's not a solitary process. You're working in a big team, but it's very insular. You're kind of inside a dark room a lot of the time, especially in post-production, kind of working away. And so to take it out and show people is really rewarding. And I actually really like it when we get mixed reviews. I find getting a bad review is never particularly nice, but a mixed reviews are always actually really interesting because you can tell that they like really engaging with the film and they're saying I really like this, I don't really like that, and there's a conversation there that is just, I mean, that's what you make it for. So it's super exciting. Yeah,
Mm.
we're over the moon.
Oh, excellent to hear that. I'm just intrigued, Matt. Were there any particular films or filmmakers that maybe you drew upon in terms of the way that you directed Monolith?
Absolutely, there was a couple in particular of films that I got everyone to watch. Like I would give everyone the heads of department to watch, and they were Denis Villeneuve, his film Enemy, which is one of his smaller films. Obviously, he did like Blade Runner 2049 and June and all this stuff, but he made this really small, very claustrophobic film called Enemy, which is about Jake Gyllenhaal discovering that he has a doppelganger, and it is a very strange and interesting film that I was really moved by. There is a ambiguity to that film that I found really inspiring. There's like a really concrete narrative that's happening on top, but there's a meaning underneath that is like you're constantly questioning, and I really enjoyed that. And the other film was we watched a couple of films by Michael Haneke. We watched a film called The Seventh Continent, which I think is his first film, and a film called Cache or Hidden. I think it was released as in Australia. Haneke does this amazing thing where he presents very horrifying things, very strange things in a very plain way. He just sort of puts the camera there and just like lets it roll and says, here it is. And I was really interested in the observational quality of his films. And I thought that was an interesting quality to bring to like a science fiction horror film. This kind of there's a sense of the voice of the filmmaker, I think, in the film. The camera is looking through glass, it's watching her. And then when strange things happen, they just happen very realistically in front of you. And that's very abject. And I find that really intriguing. And so we sort of tried to balance a kind of objectivity in the visuals, or a very kind of considered visual approach with a very more subjective, expressionistic sound design and music that kind of gets you much more inside the character's head. And I found the juxtaposition of those things really interesting. And so, yeah, they were the films that are the kind of, I mean, you're influenced by everything you've ever seen.
Mm.
The other big influence for me is the X-Files. Lucy and I are massive X-Files kids, so that is like a big influence. But I think those were the kind of touchstones very specifically for this film to kind of find just a common ground to talk with the other heads of department with.
Okay, really interesting to hear that. That's great. All right, just to very quickly conclude, I did want to ask you two things. One, I noticed that you've written for a number of other productions, including The Weekly with Charlie Pickering. Now that's quite a contrast in terms of writing compared to being
Yeah.
a director here. Tell me about how you decide on what you get involved with.
Well, when you're emerging, you're kind of trying to find whatever you can work on. To be honest, the weekly I got on, I was an intern in the writers' room. I applied for an internship and had a great time. I'd been doing stand-up comedy as well. My shorts are comedies. They're science fiction, but they are comedies. And so that was a really wonderful experience. And then they had me back for a second season where I actually worked as a clip producer. I was Charlie's always throwing to like, he throws to news clips, and I was in charge of like collating all those news clips, but it meant that I could, that was kind of their excuse. They're like, give me that day job and then you can keep trying to, write. And I got to pitch scripts, and, I got a couple on air, and it was, really, as a young writer, like really rewarding, fun experience. I loved working with those guys. But, like in the TV stuff I've done, I work with a company called Closer Productions here in Adelaide. I have for 10 years, and I script produce their shows, and have written on, they did a comedy series with Eric Thompson called Aftertaste for ABC. And so, there's a bit of like the collaborators you like working with, I think is a big thing. But I think what you're getting at is there's a big shift from like doing comedy to doing a kind of like hard science fiction thriller. And I was worried about that, like we pitched 3 ideas in this lab, and 2 of them, they were still always genre because I love science fiction, but the other 2 were more comedic. And when this one kind of took the front, what became the front runner, I said to Bettina, the producer, like I was worried. I was like, I've been doing comedy. Like, is that a problem? And she said to me, all right, we'll play a game. You got to answer without thinking, just word association. Like, if you could have directed any film in history, what would it have been? And I said Alien, the original Alien from 1979, without any hesitation. I was like, well, Alien, it's the greatest movie ever. And she was like, oh, that's good. Let's do this film then. And I kind of had this realization of like, that's all the stuff that I really love. Like, I like doing comedy. I like hanging out with comedians, but the stuff that I watch that I really love is pretty dark. It's all hard science fiction, like Akira and Children of Men and Alien, or I'm a big Paul Thomas Anderson fan. I love Magnolia poster I've got in the back. It's all pretty like strange and dark stuff. So it was like coming home or something, actually. I finally felt at home. I was making it, and I could just be scary and weird. And I was like, this is way more fun. I never want to go back to comedy. I love doing this stuff. So, I think there'll always be a part of me that makes some funny stuff down the line, but doing a horror film was a great pleasure. Yeah.
Excellent stuff. And just to conclude, are you working on another project at the moment?
Yeah, so well, the team, Bettina and Lucy and I, are trying to replicate that development process. So we are working on a film together. We can't talk, it's really early, but it's similar kind of genre. It'll be bigger. We'll have more than one actor, hopefully this time. But it's similar kind of cosmic horror, science fiction kind of world. I've been writing my own stuff, and I've also I spent the last year or so. I got commissioned by Seesaw Films to write a pilot for Garth Davis, the director of Lion, and his new film Foe is out now. They're adapting a French graphic novel called The Immersion Program into a television show. So I've been writing on that. It's like a full-on kind of psychedelic science fiction mystery show. So that's been really fun. So it's the fallow period of development. We're just writing and hoping that, something sticks.
I hope it works out, and look forward to your future productions. Congratulations, Matt, on Monolith, which is now on release, from October 26th in cinemas across Australia. And we've been speaking to the director of Monolith, Matt Vesely. Matt, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you for having me. We appreciate it.
Okay, all the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Peter. It was great to meet you.
You too.
Bye.